and welcome back to the Permissionless podcast brought to you by the team at Guardian. And as always, we're going deep with DeFi teams who are building on the edge with the most exciting technology. And of course, we are hitting on this exactly today with Mace, which is building on top of Monad, a aggregator for all of the DEXs in the Monad ecosystem. And we got to talk with Thurm from Mace about, first of all, their algorithm for DEX aggregation and everything that it takes to go into developing that algorithm, as well as the DEX aggregation model in general, and how this really works within the Monad ecosystem. And we even got to touch on a lot of the different projects and benefits of building in Monad. And we got to touch a little bit on the timeline for the Monad release and hopefully what this ecosystem will look like in the future. So we get a little glimpse into that side of things. But of course, before we dive into all of these things and really much more about Mace and Thurm's background in DeFi, my name is Owen, and over 3.5 years ago, I founded Guardian on the premise that DeFi would house trillions of dollars of assets, and that really we would need a security solution that gives a stepwise increase in the level of confidence that we're able to have when we ship in that environment. And I'm happy to say that today at Guardian, we have achieved the level of security necessary. We use not one, but two competing audit teams in our model for every engagement, accompanied by a lead security researcher and a dedicated fuzzing engineer for the entire scope. And we're able to gain so much confidence with this model that we put up our own funds as a bounty in a public contest for the contracts on behalf of the protocol team. And this is able to really show our confidence in our model, but also show the overall effectiveness of our approach in our audits. And so really at this point, it is up to DeFi to catch up. But now, of course, without further ado, let us get into this conversation with Thurm from Mace. Well, first of all, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on with us today. And really, I'd love to start before we even get into what you guys are working on Mace right now. How did you find your way into DeFi, into crypto, and what got you in the space initially?
For sure, yeah. So my name's Harm. Been in the crypto space quite a long time. Got introduced to Bitcoin pretty early,
Yeah.
late middle school. So been familiar with kind of a lot of the industry, I guess, from the early beginnings. Saw a lot of the evolutions, and yeah, went to school in Waterloo. So of course, by nature, was a fan of Vitalik and Ethereum. So I guess probably when I started working the space more, hands-on. And took a few years off, and then around COVID time 2020, that was when there was kind of like a global hackathon going on in the Solana ecosystem. It's also
Yep.
trying to learn Rust, so it seemed like a good fit to kind of put some usable skills to use, and also kind of learn by building, which was definitely something I believed in quite strongly. So yeah, went on to, co-found a team, and we, spent 4 years developing very novel AMM infrastructure, perps trading systems, a few other things as well. But yeah, just generally, as you kind of grow, realize you have different aspirations or different goals. So that was around the time where we were also, learning about Monad, and that was
Yep.
very interesting. It was kind of very similar to what we liked about Solana, fast and, fast block time and, high throughput, low gas fees, etc. So it fell in line with, what we kind of wanted to build as well. So yeah, so we started developing on Monad a little over a year ago, mostly kind of, in concept at first, given that there wasn't really any code or any feedback on kind of what to build, but we just knew it was going to be EVM compatible, so we kind of just used that in mind, and then yeah, just kind of went on to building from there, and over time we came to the realization that DEX aggregation is really where we want to have our focus. So working with the Monad team and working with other validator and MEV teams, we created a really strong routing algorithm that is able to, perform n number of simulations on all the trading pairs and come to a consensus on what effectively the best route is, or the, what yield you as a user the highest ERC20 balance, at the end of the transaction or the swap. And then we execute that, and we've, seen great performance, and real recently also now have node access, so we're able to further
Yep.
reduce latency for that as well. So yeah, overall it's been really great. We've had, a spectacular time on the testnet, working with the Monad team and working with other ecosystem teams as well. Also kind of learning about the EVM space a little bit more as well now that, we're focused here as well. So yeah, it's been great overall and a great learning experience for our team as well over the last year or so building.
Excellent. Okay, so there was a global Solana hackathon in 2020. You start getting into, developing with Rust and in the Solana ecosystem, exploring some of the DeFi there. I mean, it sounds like you guys went pretty deep in the Solana ecosystem, building like your own AMMs and stuff like this. So, I mean, I'm definitely interested to hear what your approach to AMMs in Solana were, and I think I saw on your roadmap that that's even something that you guys are thinking of building in the future for Mace. So you have all the Solana experience. What was it that got you to move from Solana to Monad? Like, why the impetus for that?
So, originally we, were really fascinated by how AMMs worked and then
Yeah,
kind of wanted to bring a little bit more like logic to the AMM because
yeah,
we realized that, permanent loss is kind of a problem. So
yeah,
we tried to develop like a single-sided liquidity solution, which we thought, would aim to kind of reduce this. But of course, nothing is actually, perfect. So everything
yeah,
is difficult and, things take time. But in doing so, what we realized is that, the market tended to move towards aggregation simply for the fact that over time there will be many AMMs, many order books, RFQ systems, etc.
yeah,
And it's not on the user, and it's not a great user experience for them to figure out like where the best liquidity source is. And we, already do this with, Web 2 things like, Google Flights, Expedia, all these different search mechanisms where they, aggregate, users, results for users.
yep,
So why not, do that for the most basic thing that you'll probably do, in the crypto space, which is, swapping. So we kind of wanted to make that very simple. And then what we realized is a lot of these aggregators end up kind of being like the front page or the first way that a user interacts with the chain.
yep,
So just given all of that in mind, we thought, why not just build that and do that really well? Because another thing that we noticed coming from Solana to the EVM is that there are a lot of inefficiencies with how
yep,
teams are going about this. A lot of them are doing a lot of things on chain, very computationally intensive, and we're all like decentralized people, so it's all great. But at the end of the
yeah,
day, if you don't need to do something, you probably shouldn't, right? And there's
yep,
always a better solution. And what we realize is like we can reduce gas spend for users by like a factor of 10 by
yep,
just cutting out any of this math logic on chain. It's just unnecessary. You can handle all this at the back end, do it better, do it faster, and then just give the user, the final execution information that they need. That also then helps them in the case of like, in case the transaction needs a partial revert or things like that. So effectively, what we've almost been able to guarantee is like no errors in transactions. Like if you sign a transaction, you're going to get the swap. Like we've just effectively
wow,
removed that, completely. And that was just like a very basic thing that we thought users would want and apparently ended up being a super huge core improvement as well. And something that other people aren't really doing, which is odd. So yeah, things like that we noticed are very like low hanging fruit that were, great improvements all the way to like being able to guarantee, simulations are actually what you get as a swap. So of course, like, there always sometimes it's like very small, like, difference there. But in general, if you go to many platforms today, you'll see one quote, by the time you execute, you get something else, and there's really
yep,
nothing you can do about it. And you just have to wonder, like, what happened? Was I front run? What were these other, other things that happened? And most likely, yes, but there's really nothing you can do to prevent that. And some platforms are trying to prevent like guardrails, but effectively not really that much different. So what we realized is that like yeah, we can actually improve on this a lot. In fact, we can also do dynamic routing. So rather than trying to just extinguish the first source of liquidity and move on to the second, whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to yield the highest output, right? So we've been able to using Rust and using faster, languages in the back end, we've been able to like optimize and, just, guarantee with a very high finality that this really is out of every possible, like, different, route that you can think of. this actually is the best one. This is what, we've executed for you. We also charge zero fees. So, there's a lot of like interesting things that I think users will appreciate and will feel very Solana-like for, people that are used to like fast blockchains already. But also for everyone that's using L2 and things like that, they'll also see, scales of improvement. And they're like, wow, like I didn't even know this is possible. Like maybe it was already cheap, but now it's effectively free almost. So that's kind of like our goal. And then yeah, we do have aspirations to build features as well. Not necessarily an AMM at this point, but yeah, we do have other things that we have planned that happy to share more details on as well.
Absolutely, dude. It's funny how I think a lot of teams are going from EVM to Solana and Rust, and it's like you guys are coming the other way, and so it's an interesting perspective there. And I definitely do want to get into more about your algorithm. I think there's a lot to unpack there. It sounds like it's pretty sophisticated at this point, but I mean, why Monad? I think you mentioned that when you first interact with a chain, a lot of times the user's first touch point is an aggregator. Was the decision there to basically go build the first touch point for a new growing ecosystem? What was like the deciding factor for that?
Yeah, that was definitely a primary, like thought for why we chose Monad. Like we saw
Yeah,
that this ecosystem is obviously developing. There isn't really a native, solution for this yet. And
yeah,
even a lot of the teams from the other EVM space that were, planning to migrate, we thought that like a native first is always a better approach for a community. And that was true. We got from pretty much day one a lot of support from the community, the other teams as well. So yeah, I think a lot of people respected that, we did spend time on Solana for years,
yeah,
but when we chose Monad, like we just chose Monad. Like this is what we're going to now natively focus on for the
yeah,
next foreseeable future, because this is what we believe in. We believe in the tech, we believe in the team, and we believe in the community. And, those were really the three like checklist items that we wanted to hit. And then, yeah, of course, being able to have that first mover, given, we would be able to potentially, have that market was of course a huge selling point. And yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely what we've been focused on, yeah, since the testnet.
And I'm interested, have you noticed anything? Is there anything notable about the difference between the Solana-based development and EVM-based development? Like, I mean, obviously Solana, in some sense, it's a lot more guarded in that, you have your PDA, you have to like opt in to these features of like having token balances and stuff like this, rather than EVM, it's just like yeah, anything can happen. You can get Ether into this address no matter what. I mean, well, even if it doesn't accept Ether, you can like self-destruct and get Ether there. And there's not as many guardrails. So is there anything that you guys notice? I mean, obviously you're a lot more lightweight on the contract side, but yeah, I mean, what's the difference that you guys observe there?
Yeah, so what we well, like, frankly speaking, like, yeah, Solidity is a great language for, new people to kind of upstart, learn things very quickly, and kind of build fast. However, there's always trade-offs with security and speed, right? So with that, I think probably over 90% of all the possible like contract exploits that ever happened are, from EVM contracts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
For that reason. So it's unfortunate. And that's why like, we personally are lightweight, like you said, on the contract side, just
yeah,
because we like the safety that Rust provides, right? So even with Solana development, where they use, effectively a framework, on Rust, it protects you as a small startup that maybe doesn't have a huge team, that doesn't have a large amount of resources from effectively, like hurting yourself very early on.
yeah,
And especially if you're building, things in DeFi, right, where user funds are at stake and different things like that. Of course, nothing's perfect, right? Still very difficult, and that's one side of it. But if you can understand, how the development works, if you can put in the time to learn, all the different, applications of Rust and kind of how to build and how to work with it, which of course is not as simple, you'll be much better off. You'll be able to realize that, if there is, some sort of a leak with the key or with an account or, when you're sending funds or, if there's some sort of missed check that you could have had, the compiler will tell you. It will kind of scream in your face and it's frustrating at times, but it does prevent, a lot of these, real issues of people losing
yeah.
funds and, all of that. So yeah, to some degree, like, is it more difficult? Sure. But is that better, strictly speaking, especially when you're dealing with funds? I would say yes. So yeah, I guess that's why like what I would say or how I would kind of like frame it. And for us, yeah, that's another reason pretty much 90+% of our code base is still in Rust. It's because, like I mentioned, we're a smaller team, so we want to make sure that everything in the back end is secure, on the infra side is secure, and the routing algorithm is actually correct and performant, and we can address issues if need be, and do all of this before it ever touches a Solidity contract and then execute something, right? So, and that just helps us sleep at night. It also, I think, will be very comforting for users on the platform. Now, of course, like we're just aggregating. So the worst thing that I guess you could experience is just like not the best swap. But even that, right, is something that we take very seriously. And, we're always making sure that, we're able to guarantee that. And if we, see, different user behavior or, transaction behavior, we'll optimize our algorithm to further, support certain routes and maybe,
Yeah.
speed things up, as we keep going. But yeah, that's something that like, like from a foundational perspective, we really believe in. And it's kind of why it's been hard to grow our team because you really need someone that like understands kind of like, Solana side of development, but then wants to also build on the EVM, which, like you said, is usually like one or the other. But that's also why, we've done very well and, our team is great is because we all like are, very, good in our ways. But, when we come together, we have a very strong team. And, I don't really know if there are many teams that would be able
Yeah.
to execute, in the way that we are and, with everything else. So yeah. But it's been great, and yeah, we will also be like helping people as well. So we're gonna be publishing like educational resources, maybe
That's sick.
even like walkthrough guides, and even some of our own code will be open sourcing over time as well to help
Very
people
cool.
out. Just because we understand like it's difficult, and if we didn't have all of these great people that we learned from and worked with and everything else, then we wouldn't really be here today. So we're always happy to, help other teams and, help the space grow as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you remove a lot of the contract level risk by, like you said, just leaving only the rails that you absolutely need on the actual chain, and then you've moved all of the actual business logic of the application up. And then, of course, now the burden is just on how do we secure the off chain and make sure, obviously, like we need to have no bugs in, because I assume you guys are generating call data and then just passing that through to the contract. Well, whoever controls the call data basically controls all the user's assets at that point. So yeah, so bottlenecking it, bringing it up into the off chain, and then securing the crap out of that. I think also a nice aspect of that is that it's not totally open and not anybody can call your off chain system and like see all the endpoints on it and see all the code and find like, oh, right there they made a mistake and then go and exploit that in some pernicious way. So I think there are definitely advantages to this, and I do see more applications moving in that direction, moving, less, keeping it, very simple on chain, and then having all of the business logic in the back end. And then I think even with like ZK proofs, this is becoming, even more. You can do a lot of computation and make it very simple on chain. And then the chain just becomes kind of like a proving layer or like a data availability layer in some, depending on your application. But yeah, I definitely agree on that. And I'm also interested because obviously, so with an aggregator product, your product to the user is essentially, so first of all, obviously it's your algorithm, but it's also all of the liquidity that you have access to and you can tap into with that algorithm. So it's kind of like a like algorithm times liquidity equals benefit for user. So I'm interested, obviously you guys are starting in Monad, and like the more liquidity that goes into Monad, the better swaps you guys will be able to provide. But have you guys thought at all about creating just a completely abstracted cross-chain solution that allows users to, whatever chain they're on, utilize the liquidity that's on Ethereum, that's on maybe even a Solana or something like this, and be able to get the best execution across the entire ecosystem? What are your thoughts on that? Have you guys thought about that at all?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Yeah, we have thought about it and we will be working with partners to
Yeah.
deliver like some sort of cross-chain solution for that. It's a little out of scope for us to take that on. I mean,
Yeah.
we obviously could, but it's just like not really that beneficial. But yeah, there are a lot of great teams like Wormhole, D-Bridge, etc.
Yep.
In the space. So yeah, we'll definitely work with a handful of partners, and then yeah, provide some sort of aggregated cross-chain swap solution.
Sweet.
That way, yeah, users will be able to, like you mentioned, either bring liquidity or still perform swaps while still, being on, that chain or using our user face. So yeah, that's definitely, something we're going to be focusing on. We actually did propose working with partners to do that even in the testnet environment
Okay.
and, just showcasing like Sefolia, another, Arbitrum testnet, et cetera, and performing swaps there.
Yeah.
So we may even, also push that out, obviously ahead of mainnet. So that's something we're also, thinking about doing just to kind of like showcase how it would work and also, let people play around different test set and tokens if that's something they want to do as well. And then yeah, likely we'll have something probably for day one, given there is still enough time
Yeah.
for that experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it becomes a bit harder to give hard guarantees on like exactly the execution when you start having to cross networks. So, I mean, the experience is definitely degraded. I mean, really depends on the underlying protocol. I think there are some that specialize in like really fast, low latency, cross-chain token bridges, and then maybe even swaps built into it, like in a cross. But yeah, I think we'll definitely start to see more aggregators that try and tap into like the entire liquidity of the ecosystem and just completely abstract that away from users. And I know you guys also had like a generalized like RFQ sort of system. So I mean, maybe this could even fit into that, but that was more specialized for like centralized exchange liquidity. What does that process look like? Is it kind of like an intense based thing, and then the market makers just come in and fill the orders on chain? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll be working with Fastlane
Okay.
actually to deliver the RFQ solution. So they're a really strong team, really great to
Yeah.
work with. And yeah, it's effectively yeah, you can just think of it as like another source of liquidity that we would aggregate. And yeah, it would be open to a handful of market makers in the network, and they would be able to bid on that flow, right? And if that order is higher than a user would get on a decentralized pool or solution, then we would route to the market maker through the RFQ. And if we've taken a look at statistics on like mainnet activities for the leading chains, we have seen that for the most liquid pairs like Sol USDC, ETH USDC, etc. They tend to have more liquidity through the market makers, through the RFQ, just given that they're able to quote, faster and more accurately. So we do, want to heavily focus on not only bringing the on-chain liquidity, which, we're actively working on by integrating all the available solutions, but also tapping into RFQ and even in testnet, being able to demonstrate like how much that might actually impact users for swaps. So yeah, our goal is always to deliver the best liquidity and swap for the user. And yeah, we would not really be able to truthfully say that if we weren't also incorporating off-chain through RFQ. Yeah, currently we'll be working with Fastlane on that. And yeah, that's our and we should also have that out in the next couple months here as well.
Okay, sweet. And how does that work with the algorithm? Like how do you so obviously there's the on-chain opportunities and liquidity pools. How do you also factor in these like RFQ opportunities in the algo?
Yeah, so with RFQ, like you can kind of think of it kind of like an order book, right? So like different market makers will bid at different price levels. So we just, take each of those and, consider that, a potential route or option. And then we'll then still run our simulations with all the decentralized pools, et cetera. And let's say, a quote for, yeah, I don't know, like Mon or something is like $1. on like a decentralized platform, but a market maker through the RFQ would pay $1.01 or something.
Yeah,
We would route them and vice versa, right? So whatever they're all bidding, we would effectively take like a snapshot at the time where a user submitted a transaction, consider all of those prices that we've received, and then, do our dynamic routing and then, determine a best route. And, it might even be potentially possible that, it is a mix of the two, right? But generally speaking, that is how our algorithm thinks of it. It's just another liquidity source, and then we just take those prices and kind of perform the same operations.
I see. Yeah, and then in terms of like further improving the algorithm, like what are you guys working on right now? What's like the bottleneck for getting, even better? How do you make the algorithm even better than it is today?
It's really just coming down to like the number of simulations we can do at a given time.
Yeah,
So, initially, there weren't really that many tokens. Now there's, thousands of tokens, and that just kind of like, obviously adds up and becomes more complex over time. So we're just figuring out ways to kind of optimize like what that looks like. We in some early research and analysis, we even identified that there were some like orphan pools or orphan pairs where you couldn't really trade with them. So we started effectively like removing those, from our lists, which, obviously provided some optimization. So
yeah,
yeah, effectively like as the number of tokens and the number of routes, grows, we'll effectively, yeah, just keep like, optimizing in those specific areas. Obviously, the problem is like dynamic continues to grow and change over
yeah,
time. So yeah, there is a lot to it. But yeah, that's definitely like what I would say our primary focus is. And I would say that it's probably something that we'll be constantly working on. I don't really see a time where maybe it's at some steady state where we can kind of
yeah,
just hands off. I think, given how markets change and everything else, I think we'll like constantly need to, adjust. But that's fine. We've done well so far, and we have a pretty good grasp on, how to handle scaling as well. So we're not really too worried about it. But yeah, definitely like a bottleneck and things that like were somewhat worrisome. We're just not having that like node access, which was
yeah.
hurting on latency and things like that. So all of that has now been resolved. So yeah, a majority of the issues we were worried about last week no longer exist, and
Yep.
I guess we'll figure out what problems we got to worry about this week. But yeah, it's definitely always fun times figuring that out.
Yeah, it's like you never see a problem ahead of time, and then all of a sudden it just kind of hits you in the head. It's like, okay, well, this is like now a big problem that we never would have thought was going to be an issue. And then you solve that, and then it's like on to the next one. Absolutely. And with relation to like other aggregators, do you see any of them as competing with you guys? Do you guys see Monad as like kind of an ecosystem you guys are already leading in the aggregator space, or like what are the dynamics there?
Yeah, there are a few other aggregator teams as well. Yeah, we're pretty like friendly with everybody. They're
Yeah,
all great teams as well, doing great things. And since everything's on the test net, I guess there hasn't really been like a true leader yet. So
yeah,
everyone's just kind of been working on towards the same goals, and so far like working with our teams is fine as well. A lot of us are also planning on aggregating other aggregators as well. So,
nice.
there's definitely like a lot of collaboration still, I think, even in the aggregation space. And, some teams have like different philosophies, right? With like, like what they think about in terms of like what they want to pull as a liquidity source, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, I think it'll come down to like what the user prefers,
Yeah,
to that end. But yeah, like the goals that we're striving for, providing the best swap, really fast, zero fee, and obviously working with all the different teams to integrate and be like one of the top teams in that regard. Yeah, we're focused on our mission. So but other than that, yeah, like we love competition, so makes us work a little harder and faster as
yeah,
well. And I think everyone benefits from that as well. So yeah, overall, I think so far it's been great. But obviously it is testnet, so I do assume things will change a little bit over time. But yeah,
yeah.
currently, yeah, it seems like everyone's pretty collaborative, and we're all just working for the same goal.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, at the end of the day, aggregation is kind of a product of competition where, all of these liquidity sources are competing to get the best price for the user. So it definitely serves a purpose in that regard. And in terms of the like how you guys are approaching gaining users, building like brand recognition, I think that's a big part of these aggregators is like, do you have a good brand in the space and do you have users that are, loyal to this particular aggregator? Like I think, for example, Matcha comes to mind. Like they have a great brand. They have a lot of users that will just go and use Matcha just because, first of all, they know of the brand and they trust it. I think that's a big thing is like if I'm going to use a provider for something, it's I want it to be, you know, the provider. I don't want to go to some like no name aggregator that just spun up and the team might be a non or whatever. But obviously, you guys are, very standing out with your work. But like, what's your approach to gaining users and building a brand and gaining that loyalty to get trust from users and have them coming back?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We kind of have this philosophy on the team of like trying to get, one new net user a day, and then just kind of like letting them, second, third order effects kind of take over from there. So yeah, we've been, since early on, very active with our community. Always ask for feedback, even in like our, private testnet that we launched ahead of the Monet testnet. That's a funny story as well. And so, we've been very open to criticism. Like if, things are broken, we mention why and, how we're going to fix it and a timeline and updates and everything forward. Because, yeah, we definitely believe in building like in the open as well. And, letting people know like, what's going on and everything like that. Because, as someone that will end up using the platform and using their capital and whatnot, trusting us, like you mentioned with Brand. We definitely want to be as transparent as possible because we're working really hard and there isn't really great communication there. Then other people can create a narrative and stuff like that. So we want to own our own narrative, and we are very like proud that we're not anonymous. To like more than we need to be, I guess. We go to events, we speak with users, in person, with other teams in person. We love doing engagements like this where we can speak to communities as well. And then yeah, we of course like have our own like Discord town halls and we do spaces and stuff as well. So yeah, we try to like hear back as much as we can and make improvements. It's helped us a lot as well. Because yeah, that feedback has definitely gotten us where we are, and we're gonna continue to use that to grow. And as we deliver more features like points, program, and other stuff. We definitely want that feedback and know how we can best handle all this for mainnet as well. Because we really think the best way to have a good project is if you have a strong community that gives you like critical feedback and helps you improve and makes it great for the next person, right? And in terms of like how we're doing this, like aside from that, like yeah, I definitely mentioned like being doing things in person. Yeah, I guess like connecting with them. And then also I think like Twitter is really great for growing your community. So, we've been really active on Twitter. We created like a Mace man character. People seem to like it a lot. We did like an NFT on testnet with Magic Eden that went over really well. We'll be delivering like unique beta features for users with that as well. So it's just like a great way for us to figure out like who cares a lot, who wants to like help us, fix things that, need to be fixed, who's also going to, be very supportive and vocal on Twitter and, help us out and, help us kind of get to that prominence. And so far, like, we've been very lucky and everyone that we work with has been really great at that. And I would say most of the time, if people mention Monad or a list of projects, we're usually on that list or, mentioned or, spoken highly of. And of course, we're, very thankful for that. And we work really hard to maintain that and make that happen. But yeah, I think being active is very great. And those are also things that Keone and Eunice and James speak a lot about at like some of the Monad Founder Lounge events that they host, where they speak about like struggles that they faced, how they overcame them, how it was speaking with users and other parties that are invested and stuff like that. And we we learned a lot from them and are still learning a lot from them. So but yeah, I think being active on the socials, letting people know like what's going on as soon as you can, and kind of helping them kind of create your product with them, I think is also great, because people like that. If they mention something and we actually push it into production, they feel involved, and they can say like, oh yeah, like I helped with that, and they can mention that to their friends and stuff. So I think it's great. The more collaborative, and the more you can involve the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the points program a couple times. So I guess a couple questions, like one, how can anyone, watching this get involved with that? And two, kind of what are the dynamics of it? How does it, play into the Mace ecosystem?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So it's not live yet. It's going to come, in the near future once we push some of these stability upgrades, and then also a few more of the integrations, just so there's like a wider set of tokens that we can work with during that event. But yeah, we'll be releasing a points program. I think it's going to be really interesting for a lot of people, especially if you played like video games in the past. We're kind of bringing a lot of that type of feel to the points program. So there'll be, levels and badges and different things like that that you'll be able to obtain. If you also hold the NFT, there'll be, some perks for that as well. So we're gonna make it kind of fun to some degree as well, because this testnet, right? So you kind of have to like make it kind of a little bit more fun and playful as well,
Mhm.
to kind of have users engaged and stuff like that. So our goal is to make it fun. And then we're also going to be working with a handful of teams to, do like campaigns with other teams and maybe do boosts and stuff like that. So there'll be a lot of fun stuff, I think, coming once we, release more information, and obviously, the program itself. We will obviously give access to the NFT pass holders first. So if you do currently hold the NFT, or if you want to use this beta ahead of time and probably earn some extra points, maybe I would definitely recommend maybe getting one of those NFTs, yeah, ahead of time, because that's definitely going to be your first access to the program. And then yeah, we'll of course roll that out to the general public, and kind of kick that off with some of the stuff I mentioned. But yeah, generally, you'll earn points by performing different actions on the platform. So it could be swaps, it could be volume, it could be certain tokens, could be just number of interactions, etc. So we'll keep it fun, and make it easy for different people and different schedules and stuff like that. So someone wants to sit there all day and kind of farm, they can do that. And if someone has like a job, and they're doing things, they can also still benefit. So yeah, we're gonna kind of try to bridge all of that as well. But yeah, it should be fun. And yeah, I guess we'll release more details in the Discord and on Twitter about that. So yeah, if you guys follow our socials, I guess that will be another early way to learn about that, and start from the beginning for sure.
Nice. Yeah, we'll be sure to link those at the bottom of the episode for socials. And you mentioned some launch partners too with the points program. Obviously you're pretty deep seated in the Monad ecosystem. What are some other projects you see, building right now that you think are interesting?
In the Monad
Yes, yeah,
ecosystem?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mentioned, Fastlane's a great team to work with. Curvins is really great too. Kuru Exchange has been doing really well with their order book. So yeah, there's a lot of like other strong teams that we work with as well, and they're great to bounce ideas off of and collaborate, and their communities are really strong, and their products are really great. So yeah, I would say like overall, like Monad has catered to like a stronger set of team, or a more mature team. So generally, a lot of the teams that you do see have been doing this for a while. They've put in a lot of thought and effort into like why they're building on Monad and what they can bring to Monad. So yeah, I would say generally, feel free to try different applications. They're all pretty great. And yeah, and those are some of the partners that we do work with, and we've we like their apps and everything else. So, but yeah, generally, ecosystem's great. Feels very similar to Solana, because that's kind of like what we were aiming for as well. So similar to how, there's a lot of strong teams, a lot of projects, and a lot of them are now dominating in their specific verticals on all chains. Yeah, we like working in this ecosystem, and we see a similar path forward for our ecosystem as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think Modded might be like one of the most anticipated L1 launches. Like people have been waiting on it for a while. Is there any alpha or like any insight you can share on when you think we'll hit mainnet?
No, like true alpha, right? Like I personally don't know. I'm assuming we'll get like some small heads up because we're an app and we would need to obviously migrate and stuff like that. But generally speaking, no. Like I can speculate. I would say I'm pretty confident that will be end of this year for sure. Probably somewhere like September, October is like my guess and what we're like speculating on the team. But we have no knowledge. We personally don't really even bother the Monet team about it just because it's probably not going to lead to anything and probably be more counterproductive. But we know they're working extremely hard. There's a lot of problems and challenges that they're solving that will of course lead to a quicker release for mainnet. So yeah, we're very confident in them and their ability to deliver. So that's our current like target. That's where we're building around, and that's when we're expecting some news. But beyond that, we're unsure. There may be some delays, pushbacks. You never know. But end of this year, I would say is a pretty solid guess.
Are you guys already in a state where, like, let's say even if Monad went live tomorrow, mainnet, would you guys be ready to just port over and start aggregating day one?
Yeah, yeah. Like currently our deployment would be able to migrate over very quickly, could probably have that up same day. Of course, there are still things we are working on, like including additional integrations, RFQ and stuff like that. So there would still be work that we would, obviously add in after the fact. But yeah, if Monad went to mainnet tomorrow, like we would be live and we would be, aggregating and generating volume. Would that be the final product? No, but yeah, like it would be live for sure.
Right. So until then, just adding on more features, working on like that RFQ process. I think you guys, I don't know, do you guys already have support for like limit orders and stuff like that?
Yeah, so those will all come in shortly after like this next set of integrations and improvements. So we're working with like order books like Curry Exchange, Clobber. So we'll be able to effectively have limit order functionality through their order books. So yeah, that's something that is on our list. And won't take that long after we push that next update. But yeah, I don't think we'll be able to fit it in with the times like schedule like right away. But it'll definitely be shortly after. But yeah, that's definitely next on the list, and then potentially like a larger feature that will also take some time. But I think users will
Yeah.
appreciate it as well.
Yeah, I'm interested with that limit order feature specifically. How does that work under the hood? Is it stored on chain and then executed by, let's say, the same off-chain system, just like you guys have that stored in your kind of like order book or something like this? Like, what's the setup for the limit orders?
Yeah, so effectively a user will submit a limit order. What we'll do with that limit order is we'll, send that to one of the order books or, that we're aggregating. And then, yeah, when that price is reached, we then route that order through our aggregator. So
Okay.
yeah, when it's created, it becomes like a potential route, and once it's in a queue, and based on your position in the queue, it'll execute if there is
Yeah.
available liquidity. So that's effectively the current logic. We may like improve or adjust it to some degree, but that's like high
Yeah.
level how it would work. Yeah.
It starts to get really interesting if you guys start to get a ton of volume on the limit order side, where you could even match those orders against inbound flow that you guys have to the aggregator itself, and potentially that would give you an even better execution. But that's probably a little bit more involved than what you guys want to start out with.
Yeah, exactly. Like for us, we definitely want to like run before we can walk. So
Yeah.
definitely doing things, in sequence. Like even with our algorithm, we started with like a very basic one with like, very few tokens and,
Yeah.
just kind of like went from there. because if we like identified any like small logic errors or things like that, they just become very hard to debug
Right.
and
Right.
identify when you're working with something very complicated. And
Absolutely.
also was great for like our team to kind of like learn as they were building it as well. So yeah, all these things I think for us benefited us from like from like a first principles perspective anyway. And yeah, as time has gone on, we've figured out better ways to do things and smarter ways, and so yeah, I think that's kind of like was a good approach for us,
Yeah.
and we'll continue to use that like as we build additional functionality on the application itself as well, because yeah, as you guys know, anytime you make some changes, there will be breaking changes, so we definitely don't want to have too many, moving parts where, we have to
Yeah.
do a lot of reverts and, it just becomes like wasted dev time. And that's not something that, we really like have on the team because we're pretty efficient. Like I
Yeah.
mean, we pretty much all developers on the team. So it's pretty smooth. But yeah, knowing that, we wouldn't make it any more difficult than it needs to be for anybody. So
Yeah, I would say also with the fact that mainnet is, months away, absolutely makes sense to just go live with like a very standard set of features and not try to get too fancy right off the bat until you've gotten some like production test. And then you can actually get some feedback and see what users actually want to have. Like maybe users like they don't even care about that. But yeah, obviously there's got to be more iteration up front, and that will save you a lot of time in the dev process, which it sounds like you guys are well familiar with that whole pipeline already. But I mean, there's a few other interesting things. I'm not sure if you guys have already implemented this. I mean, obviously it's not live because the Monad mainnet is not live, but you guys talk about like staking rewards and getting that from like MEV generated from the platform. What does that actually look like? How's that yield actually generated? And then so users will just get a share of it. Like, what does that look like?
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, when we're performing swaps, given that when you submit a transaction, the amount of gas that you input is usually kind of like blind auction or, effectively just pay enough that hope the transaction doesn't fail. There's always going to be like some amount of gas spend or et cetera that, that will exist. And just kind of like using that logic there will be, and also, potentially fees from, other aspects of the platform, like limit order or
Yeah.
whatnot as well. So all of this in aggregate, we will have like a surplus of, N tokens, from different pairs and trading, etc. And yeah, we could optionally just keep all of that and just call that a day and, add it to treasury, consider that platform revenue. However, because we do want to, share that with the user, make it something that, if you're using the platform, you're kind of, earning to some degree with that platform. And
Yeah.
we want to, offer, like, users that are loyal and stick with us, like some
Yep.
benefit for that. So yeah, we do plan to share that revenue and all of that with the user. So we'll of course be, sharing more details on that, and as well as the token, how that plays a part and everything else over time, closer to mainnet. But yeah, for sure, like, we definitely feel that some obligation there to, of course, share the upside there with our users.
Absolutely. I think this also it creates a huge flywheel for you guys, and it kind of solves that problem of having a good brand, having loyal users. It sort of fits in and creates how do we keep people coming back and how do we actually get them aligned with the platform? And then I mean if you really get it right, then that becomes the thing that you get, your first mass of users, maybe, just a couple dozen users, and then if you get them really bought in, then it starts to become something much, much bigger. But yeah, if you get the right incentives and the right model there, then absolutely it could be huge. And I think they would even get like reduced fees in general just using the aggregator. Well, I mean, of course, we'll see what you guys finally end up structuring. But like, I think it's a great offer, and obviously somebody who's planning on being a user of the aggregator long term and using it and coming back, it just makes sense to come and buy the token and stake it, and then get a little bit of the fees that you generate and other people generate, and then also reduce the fees yourself. And it makes you guys like once somebody has staked, it's kind of like why would they go to any other aggregator? Because they're not going to get the fee reduction. You guys are going to be able to offer them the best prices far and away, since they've got that discount. So yeah, it is kind of like locking in your users, and it does add like a decent moat around if you can grab up enough users and get them in there to begin with. So yeah, I think that that incentive definitely makes sense to me. And then, I mean, let's talk about some of the stuff that you guys have planned even after that, because I think you mentioned a few things. I mean, obviously, you guys have been in the AMM game for a while before this, and it might be something that you guys are looking into again going forward. What's on the roadmap after, like, let's say we get staking, we get limit orders, we get all this stuff out. What's like the next big feature protocol that would come after that?
We do have one in mind. We are kind of keeping it a little bit closer to our chest right now, just because it is like quite far out, and
Yeah,
we don't really want to kind of like put that out there, just in case it does bring any like negative attention or anything. But yeah, there is a feature. Other aggregators have also have this feature, so I guess I'll leave that as a hint for some
okay.
people. But yeah, it's definitely on our roadmap currently, and we do plan to start working on this feature once we have kind of the swap and all these other features rolled out
Yeah,
in the next couple months. And yeah, it will probably take us all the time before mainnet to have that working. Well, we probably won't launch that on mainnet during day one. Like probably more of like we'll launch that on testnet during that time. And then once we've figured out any bugs and stuff like that, we'll of course have like a mainnet release for that. Probably by the end of the year as well. But yeah, I think it'll be great. It also will provide yield opportunity and some other fun stuff as well for even like passive users, people that don't even interact with the specific feature itself. And I think it will, increase kind of like that paradigm and, activity in the DeFi space. At least that's our goal. So, but yeah, we'll definitely release more information in the future. But for now, until we kind of start building it, probably not even worth mentioning. Is kind of our take. So yeah, so for now, like it is the aggregator. It's improving it with the feature set, like limit order and stuff like that. Points, and other user requests to that degree. And then yeah, anything regarding another feature, once we've put some boots on the ground there, I think we'll start making some mention of it.
Absolutely, yeah, fair enough. You mentioned earlier you have, a really capable team. You've got expertise in your domain. But for anyone watching this, like, are there any roles you still have open? People you're looking to hire, and also just like what's the hiring process been like in general?
Yeah, no, we're always hiring because it usually takes like usually around like 6 months or so to actually find like someone
Yeah.
qualified to actually join the team. So we are always hiring. So yeah, if are the things I mentioned, like someone that understands distributed systems, has some knowledge of Rust, especially kind of in a Web 2 context, to be honest. And maybe has some smart contract or some concept of how blockchains work. That's definitely something we're looking for. Usually, like the backend roles are more common for us to like have open. But yeah, if you are like talented in another engineering domain, front end, infra, DevOps, quality assurance is another one that we're actually hiring for at the moment. So someone to kind of like test things and make sure things are going great between releases and stuff like that. So that's another thing that we're hiring for. But yeah, currently it is only the engineering roles. We also do have great marketing guys that are doing their job, and other community management is taken care of. But yeah, on the developer side, if any of those are you, definitely reach out. We are hiring. And to speak to our like hiring process, I would say pretty standard compared to other teams. So we kind of have like a, behavioral type of like call, right? Interview, kind of feel you out, see if you kind of have the right kind of mindset for like a startup and also our specific team. And then if everything goes well, we kind of give you like a take-home technical assignment. I won't share what details, for that, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a technical assignment, usually custom fit for like the specific role. So they're usually still different, but generally the same. And if everything is good there, then yeah, you're all set. We're happy to make you a reasonable offer and add you to the team. It's pretty straightforward. Our team is, as mentioned, all developers, so it's pretty much just GitHub and Discord. So it should be
Yep.
pretty easy and I would say laid back and fun for most individuals. So
Yep.
the company culture is great. Like everyone kind of just does their work, and we have a couple stand-ups, and that's kind of what we need. So yeah, if that's something that you want, reach out. But yeah, that's pretty much our process.
Absolutely. And we've got a decent amount of technical folks in our audience. So, of course, if they do have that experience in Rust or they want to get more into building on an aggregator system, getting into these algorithms, definitely they can go over and check out. I think it's mace.ag. Is that right?
Yep, Mace.ag is a domain, and yeah, you can reach out on Twitter, or my personal Twitter as well, or just join our Discord and submit a ticket or something, or just message me. We're pretty active in all those fronts, so yeah, I'm always happy to chat with anyone that's interested in joining the team.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely be sure to put your socials down below if anybody wants to reach out if they're interested in the role. They think that they might be a good fit for the team. And I mean, beyond that, is there anything else that we can push folks towards? Like, obviously, really waiting on the Monad mainnet release, but anything in the meantime? I know obviously with the points program that we can push them towards.
I think we covered most of it. I definitely appreciate you guys bringing us on and giving us the time and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Just follow the socials, join the Discord. If you have the NFT that already guarantees you early access to everything that I've mentioned. So, I think those are great points to start with. And then yeah, beyond that, we'll be rolling out things on a weekly basis. So, feel free to check it out and start early and yeah, the points hasn't been released yet, but we are still considering current activity as well. So definitely still worthwhile to interact and yeah, try everything out ahead of time as well. But yeah, appreciate you guys bringing us on and letting us share all these details.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
absolutely. I feel like we covered pretty much everything. I'm excited for obviously the launch of Monad and to see you guys day one aggregating on there and some of the features. I mean, it sounds like you guys are going to be like pretty feature complete by the time that you guys get to Monad launch. So exciting times and obviously just grinding away right now leading up to it. But yeah, dude, looking forward to it and thanks so much for taking the time to hop on and discuss everything with us.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.